Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Muy buenos días, tardes, noches, donde se encuentre. Pues vamos, este es un nuevo video más. Y pues me enfoco lo que es en un poco de lectura. Bueno, todo vendedor pues sí debe tener un buen léxico. Esto, bueno, es una de mis debilidades y pues tratamos de corregir pues algo. Y pues uno de mis pasatiempos también es el inglés. Me gustó mucho el inglés por cuestiones de mis grupos favoritos, de los Beatles, Queen, de los Doors y los Creedence. Y pues me enfoco ahorita más, pues no soy bueno, pero pues en la marcha, pues con la práctica, pues yo creo que todo se puede. Bueno, y pues este es un cuento. Yo la verdad no tengo buen nivel de inglés, pero pues, el cuento se llama La jarra mágica. Y bueno, y como prólogo tiene que la jarra mágica pertenece a los cuentos hindús traducidos del sánscrito por C.M.B. Mitra en 1919. Estos cuentos son especiales, perspicaces a la hora de hacer preguntas al final de cada capítulo, iniciando al lector a interpretar lo que ha leído. Muchas de estas historias fueron transmitidas oralmente en la India y hasta publicación de la versión traducida, que no se conocía en el occidente. Y pues bueno, vamos a lo que es a algunos de sus capítulos. Chapter 1 es el primer capítulo. Dice, acá dice pues el texto: Long alone there lived far away in the India a woodcutter called Sukha Datta and his family, who were very happy together. The father went every day to the forest near his home to get supplies of wood which he sold to him. Dice aquí, pero ya me perdí. Vamos to give to the forest near his home to get supply of the wood which he sold to his neighbors, earning vitamins quite enough to give his wife and children. At that day needed some that he took his three boys with him, and now and then as a special treat he two little girls were allowed to throw a log beside him. The boys longed to be allowed to chop wood for themselves, and their father told them that as soon as they were old enough he would give each of them a little. As of his own, the girls, he said, must be content with breaking off the small twice from the branches he cut down, for he did not wish them to chop their own finger off. This will show you what a kind father he was, and you will be very sorry for him when you hear about this trouble. And went well with Sudandata for a long time. Each of the boys had his own little axe at last, and each for the girls had a little pair of scissors to cut off twice, and very proud they all were when they brought some wood hot today's mother to use in the house. One day, however, their father told them they could none of them come with him, for the mean to go a very long way into the forest to see if he could find better wood. Their dad mirrored, hummed vainly. The boys entreated him to take them him. Not today, he said. Would you would be too tired to go all the way and would lose yourself. Coming back alone, you must help your mother today and play with your sister. They had to be the country for although Hindu children are as fond of a question as English boys and girls. They are very obedient to their parents and do as they are told without making any fuss about it. New, new, he should be late. What there was days of bright with darkness came, and there was no sign of him. Again and again the mother went to the door to look for him, expecting every moment to see him coming along the beaten path which led to the door. Again and again she mistook the cry of some night bird, for his voice calling to her. She was obliged at last to go to the bed with a heavy heart, fearing some wild beast had killed him and that she would be seeing him again. The question 1. What do you think had become of Sunahada? I don't know. 2. What would you have done when he did not come back? I went the first chapter of the chapter 2, which stood up standing for the forage. He fully intended to come back the same evening, but as he was busy cutting down a tree, he suddenly had the feeling that he was no longer alone. He looked up, and there quite close to him in the little clearing where the street had been cut down by some other woodcutting, he saw 4 beautiful young girls looking like fairies in their real summer dresses, and with their long hair falling down their back, dancing round and around, holding each other's hands. Sudapdata, who saw astonished at the sight that he let his axe fall and held the noise strongly, then answered, who all four stood still and stared at him. The woody could not say a word, but just gazed and gazing at them, till one of the saints said to him, who are you and what are you doing in the very deeps of the forest? We have never before seen a man. I am only a poor woodcutter, he replied, come to get some wood to sell, so as to give my wife and children something to eat and some clothes to wear. That's just very stupid things to do, said one of the girls. You can get much that way if you will only stop with. We will have your wife and children looked after for you much better than you can do it yourself. The next question 3. What would you have said if you had been the woodcutter? Do you think the fairy really meant that they could do after chapter 3? So that and though he certainly did love his wife and children, was tempted, and the idea of shopping in the forest with the beautiful girl that after hastened a little. Why, he'll say, yes, I will start with you. You are quite sure I will be with my dear ones. You need not be afraid about that, said another of the girls. We are glad to see that we can do our share of the wonderful thing. It isn't even necessary for us to go where your dear ones are. We shall just wish them everything they want and they will get. And the first thing to be done is to give you some food you must work for us. In return, of course. So Daptan and once replied, I will do anything you wish. Well, began by sweeping away of the deep leaf from the clearing, and we will all sit down and eat together. Sudandata was very glad that what he was asked to do was so easy. He began by cutting a branch from a tree, and with it swept the floor of what was to be the dining room. Then he looked about for the food, but he could see nothing but a great big picture standing in the shade of the tree, the branch of the which hung over the clearing. So he said to one of the fairies, will you show me where the food is, and exactly where would you like me to sit out? At this question, the fairy began to laugh, and the sound of their laughter was like the tinkling of the numbered bell. What was there to laugh at in the question at Susan? What is your idea of the fairy? Chapter 4. When the fairy saw he had astonished Subadab what of the way they loved. It made them laugh still more as they seized each other's hand again and whirled around and around, laughing at the time. Poor Shudabden, who was very tired and hungry, began to get unhappy at the which he had gone straight home after all. He stooped down to pick up his axe and was just about to turn away with it when the fairy stopped the mat well wired and crying to him to the stars. So he wanted, and one of them said, we don't have to bother about fetching this and fetching that. You seen the big picture. Well, we get out our food and everything else we want about it. We just have to reach and put our hand in, and there is it. It's a magic picture. The only one there is the whole wide world. You get the food you would like to have first, and they will tell you what we want. Sudapdapta could hardly believe his ears when he heard that. Down the through he asked, and astonished to put his hand in the pitcher, watching for the food he was used to. He loved curried rice and meat, lentils, fruit and vegetable, and very soon he had a beautiful meal spread out for himself of the ram. Then the forest called to one after the other what they wanted for food, things the woodcutter had never heard of the seed, which made him quite discontent with what he had chosen for him. The question 7. What would have wished for it? You have the magic picture. Would it be a good thing, do you think, to able to get food without working for it, paying for it? Chapter 5. The next few days passed away like a dream, and at first Subandata thought he had never been so happy in his life. The forest after went off together, leaving him alone, only coming back to the clearing when they wanted something of the picture. They would go to good old king. I think the fine stood for himself, but presently he began to wish he had his wives and children with him to share his wonderful meal. He began to miss them terribly, and he missed his work too. It was no good cutting trees down and chopping up wood when all the food ads was ready cooked. Sometimes he thought he should sleep at home when the fire were away. But when he looked at the picture he could not bear the thought of the leavening. Question 9. What sort of a man do you think Sunahana was from? What did the story tell you about him? 10th. What do you think was the chief cause of the becoming discontent after he had been in the service of the foreign for a few days? Chapter 6. Something that could not sleep well for thinking of the wife and the children he had just suppose they were hungry when he had plenty to eat. It even came into his head that he might steal the picture and take it home with him when the faded world away. But he had not after the courage to do this, for even when the beautiful gift were not inside, he has a feeling that they would not if he tried to go off with the picture, and they will be. Able to punish him in the same terrible way. One night he had a dream that troubled with him very much. He saw his wife sitting crying bitterly in the little home he used to love, holding the youngest child on her knee, who reached the other three stood beside her looking after her baby. Very exactly, he was staring off the foreground on the which he lay, determined to go home and once for that a little distance. Of he saw the fiery dead scene in the moonlight, and somehow he felt again he could not leave them and the picture. The next day, however, he was so miserable that the fairies noted it, and one of them said to him, "Weather is the muddled. We don't care to get unhappy people here. If you get enough as we do, you had better go home." Then Sudandana was very much frightened lest they should really send him away. So he told them about his dream and that he was afraid. He stirred once word disturbing for one of the money like used to hear for them. "Don't worry about them," was the reply. "We will let you what's not what keeps you awake. We will whisper in her ear when she is asleep, and she will be so glad to think of your happiness that she will forget her own trouble." Do you think that the fairy said to the woodcutter was like to comfort him about his wife and children? If you had been sooner at a place, what would you have said to the fairy when they made the promise? Chapter 7. Sudan Doctor was very much cheered by the sympathy of the forest, so much so that he decided to stop with them for a little longer at least. Now and then he felt restrained, but on the whole the time passed pleasantly, and the picture was a daily to him. Meanwhile his poor wife was at the witch and how to feel his dear children if it had not been that the two boys were brave, plucky like Jab. She really would have been in despair when the father did not come back, and all the efforts to find him were in vain. These boys set to work to help their mother. They could not cut down trees, but they could climb. Then a chop off the small branch with the axe, and this they did, making up bonelets of the fagots on ceiling. Then today neighbor this neighbor were to choose by the courage showed and not only painted well for the would often give the meal and rights and other little things to help them. In the actuality, God used to begin with Absurd and Dutton, and the little girl nearly forgot all about him. Little, little they dream of the change that was soon to come into their life. 13. What is a good of the field for the boy that their father did come back is to feel it was a good thing. Will you explain why? And if it was a bad thing, what you feel it was? Chapter 8. A month passed peacefully, awaiting the death on the forest. Someone that waiting on the fern and become every day more selfish and bent on enjoying himself. Then he has another dream in which he saw his wife and children in the old home with plenty of food and eventually so happy without his dam he felt quite determined to go that show. Then he was still alive. When he woke he said to the fighting, I will not stay with you any longer. I have had a good time here, but I'm only tired of the life away from my own people. The forest saw he was ready in earnest this time, so they conceived to let him go. Both the word king heard. People affected ought to pay him in some way for out. He had done for them. They consulted together, and the one of them told him the which to make of the him a present. Before he went away, and would give it wherever he asked for. 15. What do you think it was that made Subadatan determined to go home when he found his wife and children cold without? 16. What would you have chosen if the fighting have told you you could have everything you liked? Chapter 9. Directly in the woodcutter he could call anything he asked for. He cried, I will have the magic picture. You can't imagine what a shock this was to the fires. You know the court that fighting always keep their word. If they could not persuade Subandatan to choose something else, they will have to give him the beloved, the precious picture. I will have to seek their food for themselves. They tried all they could to persuade the woodcutter to choose something else. They took him to their own secret and trees to have in a hold all treat with a holotron, even a entrance to which not more than have ever been allowed to see. They blindfolded him before the stars so that he could never revolve the weight, and one of them left him by the hand, telling him word. Steps going down from the street began, when at last the bandage was taken from his eyes. He found himself in a lofty hall with an opening in the roof through which the light came pile up. On the floor with sparkling stone worth a great deal of the gold of the silver money. In all the tall walls hung beautiful robes. Throughout that what kind of said, well the light saw, but he was only an ignorant woodcutter, and didn't realize the value of the jewels and clothes. So what the parents said to him, choose anything you like here and let us keep of the picture. He shook his head and he said, no, the picture. I say I will have the picture one the Friday after another picture of the ruby and diamond and other precious stone held them in the light that the woodcutter might sees how lonely they were, and when they still only should his help, they got down the ropes and they tried to make him put on of the no. Not the picture, not the picture, he said, and last they have to give it up. They bowed his eyes again and led him back to the clear light and the picture. 17. Would you have he tempted to give up the picture? Well, you saw the jurors on the road. What made Subandata so determined to have the picture? 18. The numbers in English. Chapter 10. Even when the battle gave the clear the fighting did not quite give up home and keeping the picture. This time they gave all the reason why Subandata should not have it. It would break very easily. They told him, and then it will not go to you or anyone else. But if you take some of the money, you can buy anything you like with it. If you take some of the youth, you can sell them for loss of the money. No, cried the woodcutter. The picture, I will have the picture. Very well then, take the picture, they exactly answered, and never let us see your face again. So Subandata to take the picture carrying it very carefully, lest he should drop it and break it before he got home. He did not think at all of what a cruel thing it was to take up away from the fighting, and leave them either to starve or to seek for food for the then safe. The poor fighter watched him till he was out of sin, and then they began to weep and write in their hand. He might at least have wait, we got some fun for a few days. One of them said he was too selfish to think of that, said other can let us forget all about him and go and look for some fruit. Some day off the left her all crying and went away hand in hand, afraid do not want very much to eat. They can lift a fruit out view, and they never let anything make them some for Laura and the they go off of the story now, but you need not be unhappy about them, because you may be very sure that they go to no real harm from their generosity. So too about it leading him to take up the picture. 19. Do you feel the wood curtain? What's wrong to ask for the picture? What would you have been the best thing of the Subandata to ask for? But he had decided to leave the fairy king the picture. Chapter 11. You cannot imagine what a surprise it was to Subandata's wife and children when they saw him coming along the path leading to his home. He did not bring the picture with him, but had hidden in the hollow tree in the wood near his cottage. For he did not mean anyone to know what he had eaten. He told his wife that he had lost his away in the forest and had been afraid he would never see her of his. Children again, but he says nothing about the fairy. When his wife asked him how he had good food, he told her a long story about the fruit he had found, and she believed all he said and determined to make up to him now for all she thought he had solved when she called the little girl to come and help her get up nice meal for their father. Subandata said, "Oh, don't bother about that. I've brought something bad with me. I go to fetch fetch, invoked no one to come with me. Subhadata wife was sorely disappointed at this because she loved her husband so much that it was a joy to her to work for him. The children wanted, of course, to go with the father, but he ordered them to the store where they were. He seized a big basket which was full of the food. The father a tumble of the wolf in it off the floor and went for alone to the picture. Very soon he was back again with his basket full of the shot of the good feed, the very names of the which his white children have no idea of there. He cried, "What do you think of that? Am I not clearly, father? You had found all that in the forest, thought at the fruit at me when I told mother about it." The next question, 21. What would you have thought about this wonderful supply of the food if you had been one of the world culture children? What is a good thing for those children to have of the thing food without working for it? If not, what is not good thing? Chapter 12. Lights were now of course completely changed for the family in the forest. Subhadata no longer went to the cooked wolf to be sold, and the boy also left off doing so. Every day the father fetches food for them all, and the greater decide on each one of the family was to find out where it came from. They never could do so. So Subhadata managed to maintain a afraid to follow him when he went forth with his basket. The secret he'd keep from the wife to whom he just told everything soon began to spoil the happiness of the home. The children would have no longer anything to quarrel with each other. The mother grew sadder and the lad decided to tell Subhadata unless he would let her know where the food came from. She would go away from him and take her little girl with her. She really didn't mean to do this, but something soon happened to change everything. A game of cool there. Neighbors in the wood would have brought the food from the boys and helped them by giving them food a right heard of the return of their father on the wonderful change in their love. Now the whole family had plenty to eat every day. Though one of the knew where it all came from, Subhadata was very fond of showing off what he could do, and sometimes asked his old friends amongst the wood cutter to come and have a meal with him. When they arrived, they would find a shot of good feed spread out on the ground of the different kinds of wines in beautiful bottles. This went or for some months. Subhadata getting prouder and prouder of all that he could do, and seemed likely that this secret would have been discovered. Everyone trying to find out, and many followed him secretly when he set forth into the wood. But he was very pleased and dug them, hiding his truths constantly in a new place in the deep of the night. If they had only come with getting food out of the pitcher and drink pure water, or would months later it had been well with him, but that was what he could not do. Till he had what pitcher he had never drunk any free but water. But that he often took too much what it was did, which left to the misfortune of losing his beloved pitcher began. boast of the cliff near, telling his friends there was nothing they wanted that he could not get for them. And one day when he had given them a very grand feast, in which were several kind of the food they had asked for, he drank too much wine, so much that he no longer knew what he was saying. This was the change his guests wanted. They began teasing him, telling him they believed he was really a wicked robber who had stolen the food or the money to buy it. He got angry, and at last was actually silly enough to them all to come with me, and he would show them he was no robber. When his wife heard this, he was half pleased to think that not at last the secret would come out of the where the food came from. I have afraid that something terrible would happen. The children too were greatly excited and went with the rest of the bride, who followed their father to the lad, hiding belief of the precious picture. When they all got very near the place, however, some idea began to come into Subhadata head that he was doing a very foolish thing. He stopped suddenly, turned around facing the crowd of the followed him, and said she would not go. Instead, foolish thing, they all wandered back to the cottage hid. Which begged him to let her at least go with him, and they challenged and clamored. No bit bad, but it was no good, but they all had to go. The woodcutter watching till they were off outside. Would have it been what is he told had what about the picture? Do you think it would have been a good or bad thing for the secret to be found out? Chapter 13. When the water was quite sure that everyone was gone and nobody could see where he had hidden the picture, he took it from the hold in which it lay and carried it carefully to his home. You can imagine how everybody rushed out to meet him when he came inside, and crowded around him so that the worst danger of the picture began falling to the ground on the broken so that the hope managed to get into the cottage without any accident. And then he began to take things out of the picture and flying down off the ground, shouting, Am I a robber? Am I a robber? Who they to call me a robber? They get more and more. Except he picked up in the picture and holding it of his shoulder began to dance. Worried about he was to call out to him, Oh, take care, you will drop it. But he paid no attention to her. Suddenly, however, it began to feel white and guiding and fell to the ground, dropping the picture and his the soul. It was broken to pieces, and great cry of sorrow went. Someone went up from who saw the accident. The woodcutter himself was broken, hurting, for they knew that he had done the mischief himself, and that of the he had restrained the temptation to drink the wine he should still have treasured. He was going to pick up the piece to see if they could be stopped together, but to his very great surprise, like could not touch me. He heard a silvery laugh, and what sounded like children clapping their hands, and thought he also heard the words, "How picture is up again, cool it out." Hadn't a dream, not, for there on the ground were the fruit and cakes that had been in the picture, and there his wife, his children and his friends, and looking sadly and angrily at him. One by one the friends went away to leave Sudan along with his family. 75. If you had been Sugandata White, what would you have done? When this misfortune came to the husband, what would you have done if you had been the woodcutter? Chapter number 16. Is this the end the story of the magic picture? Boris Walty began a new chapter and believed that Subandata and his family they never forget the wonder walking picture, and the children were never tired of hearing the story of how the family came to get it. The doctor wondered about the forest, hoping that they two would meet with some wonderful adventure. But they never saw the fighting of the fountain magic picture be slow decreased. They wanted to return to it all the way, but they had learned one lesson. He never again kept of the secret from his wife because he felt sure that if he had told her the truth about the picture when the first came home, she would have helped to him to share the precious treasure. Ay, bueno, ya leí todos los capítulos, es un poquito cansado, pero hablan una historia, una jarra mágica, pues, muy buena, casi pues, todavía no la tengo traducido, pero ya que tengo pues ya les explico de qué se trató pues esta historia, y pues nada más yo la hago con la finalidad pues de practicar, ¿no? Y pues hay mucho, pues, sí, y si alguien tiene traductor, si hay pues, entendido, pues hay más seguro, yo nada más lo hago por fines para entrenamiento. Espero que les haya gustado, que tengan un excelente día, tarde, hasta luego, saludos, adiós.